This step-by-step service tutorial will guide you through the removal and installation of the Danfoss Turbocor inverter assembly. Safety precautions must be observed during installation, startup, and service of the compressor due to the presence of pressure and voltage hazards. Only qualified and trained personnel should install, start up, and service Danfoss Turbocor compressors. Before performing any service on a Danfoss Turbocor compressor, electrical power must be isolated. Turn off the mains input power to the compressor and tag out the mains disconnect. Confirm that the AC voltage is isolated. Wait at least 20 minutes for the DC bus capacitors to discharge. Remove the top cover, taking particular care not to touch any components underneath. Then, using an appropriately rated voltage meter, check the DC bus bars for DC voltage level. If the voltage is above 5 volts DC, wait 5 minutes and recheck until voltage is below 5 volts DC. Caution: removal of the inverter requires the compressor to be isolated and refrigerant to be recovered to atmospheric pressure before removal. First, disconnect the soft start ground wire by removing the nuts and mains input ground wire from the ground post on the compressor housing. Remove the fasteners that secure the soft start mounting bracket to the compressor, then lift the soft start and turn it over, placing it board side up on the AC bus bars. Unplug the cable connectors from the soft start board. Remove the soft start and AC-DC cable harness. Carefully disconnect the SCR gate cables from the SCRs. Remove the mains input terminal and bus bars. Remove the snubber capacitors. Remove the DC bus screws from the SCRs. Remove the nylon nuts and pressure relief foil from the capacitors at the base of the compressor. Remove the DC bus capacitor assembly. Disconnect the compressor cable harness from the IGV motor, suction and discharge sensors, and SCR temperature sensor. Remove the screws that secure the SCR manifold to the compressor. Remove the SCR cooling manifold from the interstage cooling port. Some assistance may be needed to free the manifold from the cooling port. Remove the bolts and copper tubes that connect the motor bus bars to the inverter. Disconnect the cables from the inverter, DC-DC, and motor winding sensor. Remove the screws that secure the inverter to the compressor main housing. Carefully remove the inverter and discard the O-ring. Remove the O-rings from the interstage cooling port. Use caution to not damage the bottom sealing surface. The DC-DC can be removed for use on the replacement inverter. To install the inverter assembly, first carefully clean the O-ring groove in the main compressor housing. Apply Super O-Lube and install the O-rings on the interstage cooling port. Use caution to not damage the bottom sealing surface. Apply Super O-Lube to the provided inverter O-ring and place the O-ring in the compressor housing groove. To ease installation, first install the DC-DC converter to the inverter plate. Remove the backing material from the cooling manifold of the new inverter. Use caution to not damage the bottom sealing surface. With all except the SCR manifold screws in the inverter plate, carefully install the inverter on the compressor. Tighten the inverter screws in a crossing pattern. torque screws to 6 Nm, 5 foot-pounds. Repeat the crossing torque pattern to ensure all screws are tight. Apply Super O-Lube and install the O-ring to the inverter plate. Install the SCR cooling manifold. Ensure the manifold has fully seated on the interstage cooling port. Install and torque screws to 6 Nm, 5 foot-pounds. Leak test and evacuate the compressor to appropriate pressure and accepted industry standards. Install the copper tubes that connect the motor bus bars to the inverter. Torque to 14 Nm, 10 foot-pounds. Ensure the compressor cable harness and the SCR temperature sensor cable is in place across the cooling manifold. Connect the compressor cable harness to the discharge and suction sensors and IGV motor feed-through. Install the DC bus capacitor assembly. Torque to 7 Nm, or 5 foot-pounds. Install the foil and tighten the nylon nuts at the base of the DC capacitor assembly, located under the main compressor housing. Connect the motor winding, DC-DC, and inverter cables. To finish reassembly, install the mains input terminal, AC-DC cable harness, and soft start. Tighten to 5 Nm, or 3.6 foot-pounds. Connect the soft start ground wire to the compressor ground post. Tighten the nut to 7 Nm, or 5 foot-pounds. Connect the mains input ground to the compressor ground post. Tighten to 15 Nm, or 11 foot-pounds. Inspect all connections. Install the topside covers. This concludes the Danfoss Turbocor inverter assembly removal and installation presentation. For more information on Danfoss Turbocor products and service documentation, please visit us online at turbocor.com.